Well, Greg, before we come on to the transfer window as a whole, I think we have to start with deadline day. Can you give us an idea of the events leading up to the 11 p.m. deadline?
Yeah, well, if I go right back to the beginning of the process, we started going into the winter window with two main targets. We wanted to bring in either a striker, or if not a striker, a player who had an X factor who could affect and help us with a short-term performance gain, or secondly, a player which had long-term potential with the club, which either could be a player coming out of contract or a young player. So those were the aims. When we went into the window, obviously we focused initially on the strikers. I think it's on the public record. Obviously, we had an agreement in place with Broughton for Dennis Undov, and at that stage, just before it was done, the player decided to stay in-house. We then moved on to Kone from Lorient. Again, the deal was done, all of the personal terms were agreed, and then because of other transfer business at the club, they weren't able to let the player go. At the same time, obviously, you can never just have one target at a time. There's lots of other pieces moving, and there's plenty of names that didn't make it into the public domain. And all of the time, the recruitment team are updating, and we're running players past Jon. We then get to transfer deadline day. We'd managed to bring Sorba Thomas in, which was almost a straight replacement for George Hurst, not in the same position, but a loan. Delighted to have Sorba in the building for the reasons that I explained when he came in. But going into transfer deadline day, we had a couple of live targets moving. So we knew that Lewis would become available. We'd been speaking with Nottingham Forest and his agent for probably 6 weeks running into that. And the message was consistent. Lewis can come out, but not till we brought somebody in. We knew that was gaining momentum in the 72 hours before that. And we finally got the call at 10 o'clock on transfer deadline day to say Lewis would become available. We weren't able to speak to him straight away because he was training with Nottingham Forest at that stage. And by the time he'd finished training and spoke with his agent and asked for an hour to reflect, we finally got the message about 1:30, 2 o'clock to say he's chosen he'd like to come to Blackburn Rovers. And we finally got the sign-off from Nottingham Forest a little bit after that. At the same time, we're dealing with a striker who we're still waiting on the club to make a decision on. So those two things are moving live. And then finally, Ethan Brierley from Rochdale, who's a player that we've tracked for some time, but we understood was agreeing to go to Sheffield United. And because of the embargo that was in place there, wasn't able to. So we decided to move quickly and to try and secure Ethan as well. So those were the various bits incoming going into that. After that, we just followed the process the club has always followed. I went to the medicals, which were in Manchester, just because we knew timelines would be tight. I wanted to be there. I wanted to make sure everything was okay with the players. Obviously, Lewis had only just been told by Nottingham Forest, so I had to make sure he was okay. We will make sure he'd had food, all of the stuff you need to do to look after him. And then we left Manchester. Ethan left Manchester about 8:30, and I left about 9:20, 9:30. With Lewis and with his representatives to come back to get the paperwork done. So that was the build-up for you.
What went wrong after that then? What were the issues with the submissions?
Yeah, well, look, I think there's definitely some internal factors, and we mustn't gloss over that. But also there's external factors, and we're in the middle of an appeal process now. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. We've obviously got the very best people working with us on that case. And I hope you understand why I can't go into what those external factors now. They're not spurious, they're not ridiculous, otherwise we wouldn't be wasting the time and energy on an appeal. We believe there is something genuine there on that, but equally we're not trying to shirk responsibility. And I'm not trying to shirk responsibility. I am responsible for all football matters at the club. And transfers and recruitment is one of the 5 areas I look after. And this is a fail. We failed to get Lewis across the line, so I take responsibility for that.
The club statement mentioned the mitigating circumstances. What were they?
I can't go through those today. I hope you understand the reasons. I'm sure they'll become public, and if not, I'm happy to come back and have a discussion in a week or whenever the appeal has been heard. But I think it would weaken our appeal process if I was to go through those publicly today.
How confident are you that appeal or appeals, that they will be successful?
To be brutally honest, I'm not particularly confident, not because I don't think we've got really good reasons, I do, but my understanding is nobody's ever won an appeal against a late submission to the Football League. So we're going to have to set a record if we are to do it this time round.
Ultimately, Greg, where does the responsibility lie in terms of submitting all the relevant documentation in time?
Submitting the documentation is just part of the process, but overall recruitment, the buck stops with me. So we mustn't blame the owners, we mustn't blame the recruitment team, we mustn't blame the admin legal team at the club. The buck stops with me.
How do the players involved actually feel about it all? How difficult of a few days has it been for them, and what's the sort of communication been like between the club and the players involved?
Yeah, devastated, both players. We've been in constant contact with both them and their representatives since it happened. Yesterday, when we got the first notification from the Football League to say the registrations hadn't been successful, we spoke straight away with Lewis's representatives and with Nottingham Forest, because at that stage they hadn't handed the 25-man squad in, and we said there's an option to do so here and now, and they've obviously chosen not to put Lewis into that squad. And the moment that decision was made, it was absolutely cemented for us that the appeal was definitely there, and we had the support of the player and agent to do so. With Rochdale, it's a little bit different because that was a permanent transfer, and we've agreed that transfer will definitely go through regardless of the appeal. It'll have to be postponed to the summer, but everything can be done in advance of that. Especially for a club like Rochdale, where every penny is absolutely vital. We have to ensure that the future of a vital member of the Football League is protected. We owe them that.
Do both players still want to come now at this moment in time?
Yes, they do, 100%.
On a sort of wider theme, how does all of this reflect on the football club as a whole, do you feel?
Well, look, I think obviously we haven't managed to bring in the players we targeted to bring in during the window. We've come out of the window as we went into it, neutral. We've lost one loan and we've gained one loan. So in terms of the process itself, we've missed out on what we wanted to do, and there's definitely internal reasons for that as well as external. I think we have to do a full process now to find out what those are, but we can't dwell in the past either. We have to stand up and fight, and we can't lay down on the canvas. We have to move forward with this. Otherwise we're going to be forever looking backwards, not forwards. So there's definitely things we can learn from it. And I think, look, we owe an apology to our supporters for how it happened, how it's been communicated, how it's been continues to be communicated, and that's why I'm here talking to you today. I think we certainly owe apologies to both players who were here doing their interviews with you guys just the other night. And we owe our apologies to the recruitment team who've done an enormous amount of work in the build up to this process. Finally, I won't say most importantly, but it could be described as most importantly, to Jon Dahl, because we haven't managed to secure a player that we think could have given him an edge going into the last 18 league games of the season. How
does Jon feel about how everything has panned out over the past few days?
Yeah, Jon's disappointed. We're all gutted. He personally has phoned Lewis. He's really, really disappointed because we landed the player. The player was coming here. It was agreed. We'd done the hard bit. This should have been the easy bit. And that's why I'm furious. We've done all the hard work, 6 weeks of hard work. But now's not a time for pointing fingers. Now's not a time for apportioning blame. I take responsibility. I'm in charge of recruitment at the club.
The fans are frustrated, disappointed, angry. Can you understand all of that? And what would your message to them be?
Yeah, look, I've said I apologise to them. We haven't managed to bring the player in, and we probably haven't communicated well enough since then or during then what's happened. All I can assure them is that we will ensure that the whole process, and the process this year was no different to how the club's always done it, or always done it for the last 10 years. We followed that process absolutely to the letter, but ultimately it's been shown that the process hasn't been good enough. And as I said, there's both internal and external reasons for that. So we have to be better going forwards. This is an opportunity for us to learn, opportunity for us to improve, and an opportunity for us to be better in the future.